Hello and welcome to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. In this podcast, we are going to bottle some NABCEP PVIP, that's PV Installation Professional excitement with Garret Little, who just passed his PV Installation Professional, his PVIP NABCEP exam, and that's the gold standard NABCEP exam. So, hey, Garret, what's happening?
Oh, not much. Just getting over a little bit of cold, but I'm feeling a lot better today. And luckily out here in the Northwest, it's really sunny today. So it's nice to wake up and see a bright, cold day. So that's good for a change.
Yeah, it's like bright sunlight, that's medicine.
Yeah, bright sunlight and pretty cold. So it's pretty optimal for PV right now.
Hey, yeah, I know. I hope your grid doesn't crash. Just kidding.
Yeah.
So what part of the Midwest are you in?
No, the Northwest.
Oh, excuse me, the Northwest.
Yeah. I live right in Vancouver, Washington, just right across the river, Bend, Oregon.
Great.
We're just right there along the Columbia River.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I've been here most of my life, aside from the couple of years I was in Colorado, but born and raised in the Northwest.
And so what is your job over there? You're working in the solar industry.
Yeah, I work for Sunbridge Solar. I've actually been with them since February 2014. Actually, I think on the books it says March, but next Monday is my 10-year anniversary with them. So It's been quite a ride.
Happy anniversary and happy PVIP.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it.
They're lucky to have you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm a project manager. We're a pretty small family-owned company. Started with them as an installer, although I actually started in solar in Colorado when I was there for a couple of years, but started as an installer, and then I wanted to go more the project manager office route. I installed with them for a few years, and then essentially it's me and the owner in the office for the most part. Oh, well, and a couple others, but it started more just me and the owner in the office. So yeah, I just do mostly residential project management and a little commercial.
Great. So what I mostly wanted to talk about too was your experience with the PVIP, because you sent me an email, you took my class, and you passed the exam, and you were pretty excited. And so maybe you can just tell us a little bit about your history of dealing with the PVIP exam, which is a difficult exam.
Sure.
And it's the one that everybody wants. It's the gold standard. And you are PVIP certified now.
Yeah, no, it's a great thing to have, quote, behind me, I guess. Something to look forward to in the future, is having that on my name now. But the history, I took it about 9 years ago. It was right after I got out of my 2-year kind of trade school, Ecotech Institute in Aurora, Colorado. I took it and I didn't pass it then. I kind of realized how difficult it was. And I really was a little underprepared because that school was more hands-on, just installation, not as much calcs and this and that,
Yeah, I'm familiar with Ecotech in a weird way. I was working for another company, and I work for all different places. And so they would just hire me to teach a class here and there. And so the other company got bought up by Kaplan, and then Kaplan bought up Ecotech. Then they branded what I was doing Ecotech, but it was a completely separate organization from the Ecotech in Colorado where you would go to solar school and stuff like that. And then they sold it to some other organization. I think it was like Virginia College or something like that. And they did all kinds of training for all different things, but the Ecotech was their renewable energy branch. It branched off from Kaplan Clean Tech, which I was doing. And I made some videos and stuff for them. And then they shut down, like a lot of those private colleges shut down. And so there were some people that were partway through the program that all of a sudden couldn't complete it. And they got loans and stuff like that. And that was unfortunate. I felt bad for some of those people. And I do run into some people. So I guess you completed the program.
Yeah, I did hear about that. That was a little bit after I left. I did hear that news that they shut down, and it was a weird situation, but I was already gone. I did complete the program.
That's awesome that you completed it. And I hear about that with other private colleges and stuff too, where they would just shut down the school and then all of a sudden you're out of luck. I think there still is some way for people to get their transcripts, something like that, if this happens for these private colleges that shut down.
Yeah, I sure hope so. I saw when I was in the 40-hour course or whatever with you, you mentioned that, and luckily I have mine saved. So I do have my transcript, but I have heard that it can be a little tricky to get those.
You had to save it in a couple of places just in case.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, so I went to Ecotech. I took the PVIP originally, like I said, about 9 years ago, right out of Ecotech, and I didn't pass it. It was honestly something where I just, I did in Ecotech right before graduating. We took the PVIP back then. It was the PVIP Associate, I think it was called back then.
Or let's see, we have the PV Associate or
PV Associate,
which was formerly called the entry-level exam.
Yes, the entry-level exam.
And then the PVIP used to be called the PV Installer Certification.
That's right. So we took the PV entry level, is what it was called then, right before we finished the school. So I did my entry level and I did really good on that. But it came to a shock to me because I was pretty young in the industry and whatnot, how much different the PVIP was. So
quite a bit.
Yeah, it's quite a bit different. So I took that right after and I didn't pass it. And long story short, it was kind of
and maybe what I'll do is just like take a little break here, or is just talk about that too a little bit.
Okay.
And so it was formerly known as the entry level exam, and it's the associate. And that's the kind of test that somebody could study for a week, like somebody that's done a little bit of college that knows how to take a test and things like that. And so they can study for a week and pass the test, like after 5 days of studying. And then the PVIP exam is more like an electrician's exam. It's open book, National Electrical Code, NEC. And that exam, people will oftentimes study for a year sometimes. I mean, it depends. There are people out there that are engineers and things that don't need to study at all because they already do this stuff every day. But it's not anywhere near the difficulty of the PV Associate exam.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, the PV Associate, it's not nearly as deep into code and calculations. It's a handful of questions or some basic OSHA regulations, a handful are more tilt and azimuth and basic PV design, site assessment situations, where obviously the PVIP is, it's a much more deep dive into code and calculations and more intricate PV design, I guess I'd say. That was my experience for sure.
Yep. So let's see. So we went back, what was it? 9 years in time is when you had that experience, and you went to Ecotech, you took the associate exam that was then known as the entry level. Then you took the PVIP, which I guess was then known as the PV Installer Certification. I think maybe somewhere around that time is when they changed the names. And so where did that take you?
Yeah, 9 years ago, quite a bit different, as a lot of people know. I had to actually drive up to Seattle and take it.
Yeah, I remember that too. Like, we used to have to do it in person. And so one of the many benefits of COVID is they let us start taking these exams at home on our own computers. And so all you need is a webcam and a computer and a room where you can be all alone, and you're taking the test at the comfort of your own home. And they have live online proctors, which means there's somebody that's watching you.
Yeah, I think that's the route most people would go. I actually did do it in person this time around as well, only because I just didn't want any distractions, and I just feel a little better in like classroom setting. I feel a little more pressure, but in a good way. And it was only 30 minutes away in a town not too far from here. So I decided just to do that. We've got a dog and a couple cats, and I don't know, they run around quite a bit. I just didn't want to be distracted. So I did take it in person.
My first NABCEP exam, I think it was the PV Installer exam. So first, I should say, besides the associate, I took it at a community college. It was called DVC, Diablo Valley College. And pretty soon after that, I was teaching at the college. But anyway, like, he had 2 classrooms that were connected with windows, and everybody was like spaced out, however far you were supposed to be spaced out. And we were all taking our tests in there. And the guy that proctored the test, he's kind of a solar saint. I don't know what he's doing right now. I've emailed him a few times. His name is Tom Chatanier. So if there's anybody out there that knows Tom, tell him I said hi and to give me a call just to see what's up. But he trained a lot of people in the industry in the earlier days. He was like the first community college that I know of that was really teaching a solar class. And he did the associate exam at that time too, had to be done in person. But the way that was typically done, it was a lot easier than the PVIP to do it. Just at the end of your class, you would sit for the exam. And then I remember the way that they did it too. If you didn't pass the entry level exam, then what would happen is you could just go back to another class and take it with the other class. It was kind of cool how they did it that way. And people can still do it. But the thing is, as far as doing it in person, like at the end of a class, is you need to have a place where it's like your permanent classroom where you're going to do the exam over and over again. So people these days are mostly just doing it from home. It's just so much easier to do it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I'm sure that's most people would opt for that. I think I was outlier there, but I just saw that it was close by, and I was like, I'd rather just go up in the morning and take it.
Oh, so you just did it recently that way?
Yeah, no, my time that I passed, which was actually a week ago, This time I was taking the test. I was actually just starting it this time a week ago. I did do it in person only because I didn't really want distractions, and it was only a 30-minute drive in a town I go
Great.
to fairly frequently.
Yeah, you make it a ceremony out of it. Well, that's
Yeah,
cool.
exactly.
So I don't see too many people doing that. So
Yeah.
maybe I can ask you just about a little bit about your experience.
hmm
So you go into the testing center, you check in, they empty your pockets, you
hmm
go sit down at a computer. And so I've had it a couple of different ways. One way that was weird was it was like a flat desk with a monitor in it. Was it like
Yep.
that?
Yes, it was a flat desk with a plexi plastic,
Yeah.
tabletop over it. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And
And
a
I thought that,
covering over it, a little dome thing over it just to cover the screen, just a little covering.
yeah, so nobody's watching what you're doing or anything like
Yeah.
that.
Yep. Yep.
And I think too, like they have these like polarized glasses where you can't see it at an angle, like it's built into the screen. So like the person next to you can't see what you're doing. And then what did they give you for taking notes?
I was actually pretty relieved because for some reason I thought that you only got one piece of paper, but they give you a little.
A
I
whiteboard?
mean, it is dry erase. It's essentially dry erase grid sheet paper, but there's like 4 pages, and they're fairly decent size. They're like bigger than 8.5 by 11 or whatever. It's like a little booklet, but it's just a dry erase.
Okay, that's the first time I heard of that. So that's good to talk about it.
hmm
So is it like it's bigger than the size of a piece of paper or somewhere around there?
No, it's about 8.5 by 11. It seemed a little narrower and slightly taller, maybe. I don't
Mhm.
know, but it's basically 8.5 by 11, pretty
Yeah,
close to that.
something like that. And then did they give you an eraser?
They said don't erase it, they'll clear it later.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. And then I remember one time they gave me an eraser, and then the worst part of it is they gave me this dry erase marker that was totally messed up. It was like this tip that was all flattened out, and it was just hard to write on. And it was probably about the size of a half of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper
Jeez.
that
Oh,
I could keep
wow.
erasing it and stuff like that. But
Wow.
and so yeah, it would have been nice to have like a fine point. So that worked out pretty well for you, I guess.
Yeah, it did. I had more paper than I needed. Fortunately, I'd practiced quite a bit, and I got my writing down a little small. But the bottom line is they did give me more paper than I expected, which was great because I think for tests like that, I don't think you should be really limited to how much paper you get, to be honest.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Because you're just writing your own notes.
You're just doing calculations. Yep.
So for the people out there that are taking it at home, like most people, you get 2 pages of paper and you have to
hmm
supply it yourself, of course. So they're 8.5 by 11. So that's 4 sides and you get to write on that. And then at the end, they make you tear it up in front of the camera.
Oh, wow.
They tear it
Interesting.
up in so many pieces. And I forget how many pieces, but every time you tear it in half, it's like you got 2, 4, 8, 16, 32.
Yep.
And I just saw this thing, I think it was Mythbusters, where they took a football field sized piece of paper and they folded it 11 times. And towards the end, they were using one of those rollers that they flatten roads with.
Oh, wow.
But they
Wow.
did it. But
That's
it's just
crazy.
amazing. It just shows you about, doubling or halving things,
hmm
which is doubling in reverse.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
so that's pretty cool. And I imagine it was probably a lot the same once you were logged in to take the test. So you have like Measure Learning, MEAZURE, and they're the ones that are proctoring the exam. And you go in there and you're just clicking bubbles and stuff like that. And then there's a calculator that's built into the exam. And I imagine you had that too.
Yep, that was
And
actually, I brought my own calculator, and I will say, that was
did
one
they
thing
let you use it?
no, they did not,
Uh,
which was fine. I strongly prefer a handheld calculator. That was one of the things I did not like.
no.
It's just at first I was trying to figure out how to get to reverse tangent, and it just takes way more time.
And another thing too about the trig functions, I always do it in degrees and sometimes
Uh-huh.
it's set for radians. And so a lot of times people are like, wait, this calculator's not working. And then they panic. And panicking is not good when you're taking a test.
No.
So if you're out there and you're ever looking at a calculator trying to do trig and it's giving you some really crazy answers, look for that button that might say like degree, rad, tan, something like that, and just make sure that it's on degrees, unless you're really good at doing trig and you know how to do it with the radians.
Yeah, that was definitely a little bit of a tricky part, and I guess just a tiny little disappointment. But I guess that's what I get for going to take it in person. I could have taken it at home, but
Well, no, at
um,
home it's the same thing.
oh, okay. Oh, yeah, because you have to use a
Yeah,
calculator on the screen or whatever. I'm assuming,
yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah, they don't let you use your own.
There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, it just takes longer, and I was so familiar. I mean, I've done a lot of schooling in my life, and I've always just used a calculator, so it just kind of threw me off a little bit. But I mean, it was fine.
Yeah, it just takes a little getting warmed up.
Yeah, it does. It takes a little getting warmed up, but once you get going, it's totally fine.
Okay. So how often did you use that calculator? Was it on like half the questions, or what do you think?
I would say it was probably about 30 to 40%, maybe, right around that.
Okay.
Cool. I'd say about a third, a little more.
That's good to know. Yeah. And of course, we can't talk too much about what's on the test, but I thought that was probably not being too specific there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what was the right answer for question 32? No, I'm just kidding.
I would say C, I guess, only just because I don't know. I like to choose C if I don't know, but
Yeah, and that's testing psychology too, because if everybody doesn't know the question and everybody answers C, and more people answer the wrong answer than the right answer, there's more likely of a chance that they'll throw it out. And 25% of the time, all those people that answer C get it right. So it's like, well, they're going to either get it right or they're going to throw it out, maybe, if that works.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a NABCEP thing. I've done that forever. I feel like C is just always my go-to.
Yeah. So everybody out there, remember the C.
Yeah.
You're going to trick those test writers. But I'm sure they have a way to trick us on that too. They might ramble up the order of the questions or something like that on the test.
Yep.
But you did pretty well too. You got a pretty good score. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I got 87%, which I'm happy about. I did well. I did a little better than I thought, for sure.
Yeah, and that's a really good score. So
yeah, I appreciate it. Definitely attribute it to your class through HeatSpring. It definitely helped a lot. I mean, I can't really almost express how much it helped, but it tremendously helped. So, I mean, if I wouldn't have gone that route, I think I would have panned out quite a bit different.
Great. Thanks so much. Yeah, you sent me that email and I forwarded it to my mom because you were praising me so much. And she was like, I'm so proud of you. Today's her birthday too.
Oh,
happy birthday, Mom.
Yeah, tell her happy birthday.
And so taking the PVIP, now that you've done it, do you have any other things that you want to do? I know one of the things that a lot of people do is they'll take another exam because once you pass the PVIP, you pretty much could pass the other NABCEP exams without studying.
Yeah, I've kind of heard that. I haven't really fully processed it yet. I actually saw a thing through HeatSpring right now about storage systems. They've got like a deal going on with that.
Yeah, the Energy Storage Installation Professional exam.
Yes, I think it's called. Or
yeah, that's the new exam that they have, the ESIP.
ESIP.
And they are giving out free exam fees, which are valued at $375.
Wow.
So for the first 200 are free. So if anybody out there wants to take that exam, that's a good one to do. And I should take back a little bit what I said about if you pass the PVIP, you can pass the other PV exams. The ESIP was a lot different. And just for example, it's open book, not just NEC, but it's a different version of the NEC. And so another thing too is when you're studying for the ESIP, you can expect to have more modern lithium ion types of questions. You might have noticed on earlier versions of NABCEP exams that lithium ion batteries have just come on so quick, they haven't had time to switch over from lead acid. And if you go back 5 years, a lot of the stuff that people were doing were lead acid systems, and now lithium ion is taken over.
Yep, that's definitely been quite a rapid change in the industry, I'd say. I haven't really had too much time to process what's fully next. I probably will take something else. I don't know exactly when yet. I actually want to get really extremely good with Microsoft Excel. I know it's not necessarily directly related, but I use it very frequently in my personal life and in work. So I want to get some sort of certification through Excel and become basically an Excel wizard would be maybe my next thing, because I do use it at work a lot. So
yeah, seems to happen. Yeah. Spreadsheets.
The spreadsheets, yep. But as far as solar specific, yeah, I'm not sure yet. I'm sure I'll take another one of them at some point, probably within the next year and a half or so. I don't know. But I haven't fully 100% decided yet. This was kind of a big step for me. So getting this done, I'm taking a little break.
Yeah, with the NABCEP certifications, you can get more letters after your name than there are letters in the alphabet, which is pretty cool.
Huh? Yeah, that is pretty impressive.
And so some other things too about you. I noticed that you've done some international stuff.
Yeah.
What did you say? You mentioned Nepal and Bogota.
Yep, done some projects in Nepal and, like you said, Bogota, Colombia, and outside Bogota. Actually, one was in the Amazon in Leticia, which is right at a three-way point in the Amazon where you can basically see Brazil and then you can see Ecuador, I think it is. Sunbridge Solar, where I work, that's how the company was founded on. The owner's pretty big on international work, and although we haven't done it as much lately, that's how it started. So we have some connections in Nepal. So I went over there in 2015, and then I went to Colombia in 2017. And then other people of our team have gone back to those places, but I haven't since then.
So is it like a volunteer type of thing, or are you guys making money?
It's pretty much volunteer. The boss of Sunbird Solar, the owner, my boss, he spent some time in Nepal doing some studying and stuff and worked on some solar stuff out there. So he has connections and knows some people. Now we actually have a Sunbridge Nepal, but it's a very small group, but they work on stuff and they're affiliated with GOM Power. But we know them. And then he just met a lady at the solar conference, I think in Vegas years ago from Colombia. So we made connections with her.
Great.
Yeah. So they're people we know, but it's pretty much volunteer work.
Yeah. So for Nepal too, it kind of reminds me of Grid Alternatives. And they do some volunteer stuff. And I know Nepal is one of the places where they're out there, doing their Habitat for Humanity type of thing and doing solar systems in Nepal and also in other places too, like Mexico and stuff like that. So pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, it's great. I love doing that stuff. Like I said, I don't get to do it as much.
When you were there, did you take an extra day and go to the top of Mount Everest?
I wish. I don't know. I didn't get to do that, but maybe next time.
And then in Bogota, did you get to see what the famous Colombian hippos or anything like that?
No, I don't think I saw that either. Bogota was actually fairly quick. We were in Leticia more, so we were more in the Amazon. We weren't in Bogota too long. It was on a school as a system we did on elementary school.
Cool. Yeah, I know that they're going to do the next, or not the next one, but the one after, the COP conference. And so that stands for Conference of Parties. And I went to COP 27. They just had COP 28, COP 29. I think that's Uzbekistan. And the one last year too, it was kind of famous. They had it in the UAE over there in Dubai. And it was run by an oil executive, which is weird. And Uzbekistan is also like an oil country too. And the one that's going to be COP 30. And so that would be in 2025. Which I'm planning on going to, is going to be out in Brazil. So that'll be out there where you could see it.
Wow, that's cool.
Just like you could see Russia from Alaska.
Yep.
Keep an eye on those guys.
Yeah, no kidding.
So what kind of projects did you do out there in those places? Were they like off-grid? Were they little water pumping systems or microgrids?
The one in Bogota was grid tied. I mean, this was a while ago, so I'm trying to remember all of it. But the one in Bogota, I'm pretty sure was grid tied for sure. That was, like I said, it was on an elementary school right in the heart of Bogota. The one in Leticia was off grid.
In Leticia, once again, where's that?
It's in Colombia. It's at a three-way. It's literally on the Amazon where you can look right over and there's a point. I don't know the name of the town in Brazil. And then if you look diagonal this way, it's like a three-way point on the Amazon where you can see Ecuador, Brazil, and you're in Colombia. So it's in the Amazon, though. I mean, you fly in and you're in the Amazon. And that was an off-grid system. It was a little battery backup system on a banana leaf hatched building. Like we had to carry the batteries pretty far into the Amazon. It was quite a project, but a small system just on the top of a bamboo and, bamboo hatched roof hut, pretty much.
Cool.
And then Nepal was a water pumping situation in a remote village. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that Colombia has a bad rap from things that have happened a long time ago, which they've made a lot of Netflix specials about.
Yeah.
But I know some people that are from there, and it seems like a pretty nice place. Like it doesn't seem all crazy and stuff like the Netflix movies.
Yeah, my experience was great there. I mean, it was just like any other big city. I don't know. I didn't really get any bad vibes whatsoever. I really liked it. We still keep really good contact with the people down there. In fact, one of the ladies, the one that got us connected there, she's came up and done comedy here in Portland. So we stay in a really good contact with them down there. So
she's a Colombian comedian.
Well, she does a lot of stuff. She started doing solar, which is what we got into with her, and she still does that stuff, but now she's doing some comedy. She's become a great friend of ours, and she's came up and stayed with us to learn a little bit about how we do solar stuff up here. And then while she's up here, she did some comedy here in Portland. So
wow,
she's doing that on the side, basically.
I'd love to have a solar Colombian comedian on this show. Maybe we could get her.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure she would be more than willing to and happy to do that.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds really important. Cool. Awesome. Let's do it.
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
Great. Yeah. We interrupt you for a very important announcement. Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast has been brought to you by Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. That's right, Sean White is sponsoring his own podcast, and he wants to remind you to go check out some of his classes. You can go to SolarSean, that's solar, SEAN.com, and then click on the links to check out his classes. You can check out his HeatSpring classes, and you can also hire him to teach classes for you, like at your company, something like that. Now back to the show. And so tell me about what you're up to these days. You're working at a company that sounds super cool, Sunbridge, that started off doing like volunteer type of stuff and sends you to these different countries, and I guess it supports you in getting NABCEP certified and all that stuff, I imagine. And your job is project management?
Yeah, I mean, it's project management.
Just on a day-to-day basis, maybe we could just let some people know what a project manager does at a company like yours.
Yeah, I mean, my day-to-day role is really to manage the flow of the jobs from when they come in after we sign contract comes into post-installation. Really, it's just watching over every aspect and make sure that the jobs go from, like I said, coming in as a brand new job to getting ready through permitting to getting ready for installation, and then through the installation phase and after, and making sure that jobs move enough through the queue that they're basically that we have a steady line of work and watching. And then I do a lot of ordering. I do a lot of lining up subcontractors for certain things if needed. It's a lot of different buckets my hands are in, I guess you'd say. We're a small company, so I'm always interacting and dealing with the field crew all the time, the electricians. And then, like I said, we have a few people in the office that kind of help aid what I'm doing as well.
Great. So there's multiple crews, I guess, and then you try to figure out how to get them going and support them and make things happen.
Yes, that's pretty much it. And then all the behind the scenes work up and leading to them getting out to a job.
Great. Awesome. So Garret Little, PVIP, NABCEP expert. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about your long PVIP experience.
Yeah. So like I said, or like we discussed already, I took it 9 years ago and I was a little unprepared, but the struggle I had up until just fairly recently was I think I reapplied to take it once, maybe twice. I don't remember exactly since then, not including this last time when I passed, but I would get all amped to take it and want to study for it. But in all honesty, it was hard for me to find direction and guidance of like what I should really be studying. I really was like, oh, well, I have all these books that I can just keep reading and this and that. I'll just pull some of them out that I use for school and whatnot. But I don't know. It was hard for me. I mean, I really needed like a course or something that could keep me on track. And so honestly, I don't remember how I found out about HeatSpring, but I just wanted to take the whole course, the 58-hour course. The first 40 hours, I think it is, I can't remember what it's the actual title of it, but it's like a crash course essentially.
Yeah, so pretty much there's like the first 18 hours is
18 hours. Yeah, that's right.
Is more aligned with the associate type of material. And then the 40 hours is more aligned with the PV installation professional type of material.
Yeah, so I just wanted to do the whole thing. I've been in the industry a while, but I was like, let's just take the whole course. Let's just start fresh, real nice, and go through the whole thing. And so I did, and it helped tremendously keep me guided in what to study at the 18 and 40-hour course that you taught. It covered everything that I experienced on the NABCEP plus a lot more, to be honest, which was great because I think I don't want to say it over prepared me, but it really like everything that I experienced on the NABCEP was covered for sure in the course. So yeah, I needed something all these years, and this kind of helped me stay grounded and focused. And actually, it was a formal class that I could actually take that really, I knew that what I was studying in this class was directly related to pursuing the PVIP. And that's exactly what it did. Yeah, again, I think it's a great thing what HeatSpring's doing, what you're doing. Your class was so easy to stay focused on. Definitely from a staying engaged point of view, it was by far the easiest online class I've ever taken. I have taken a ton solar related and not, so thank you for that.
Thanks.
I'm really glad that you guys put together this course, and I would encourage anyone honestly just to take it if they're wanting to take the PVIP, because like I said, I think if I wouldn't have taken it, my outcome would have been a little different. This really prepped me really well. And even all the things that the NABCEP didn't really cover that this course did, I learned so much from it that it's pretty incredible. If I really even look back a few months ago or 6 months ago before I started it, I mean, yeah, it's just night and day. Like I feel like I've advanced quite a bit just as far as knowledge goes.
Wow. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the first time that I took what was called the PV installer exam, which is now called the PV installation professional exam. And I remember we had a study group, me and a couple of guys, and we didn't really know what to study. And they had this thing called the NABCEP resource guide, and we studied this thing inside and out. And I remember after the test, we're like, none of that stuff was on there. And it was like, well, what do we study for? And there was no way of figuring out what to study for. And so I made my books, good study guides for the NABCEP exams, but also besides being good study guides, they're also good books for people that are not taking the exams because it's just good stuff to know. It's like the stuff that you're supposed to know. Yeah, that's exam prep. Like I used to work for Kaplan too, and that's their thing. They prepare people for all kinds of exams, law exams, graduate exams, medical exams, all that kind of stuff, nursing exams, phlebotomist exams. They're all into the exam prep. And so I decided to get deep into the exam prep and get people to pass their exams. And that's kind of my thing, is getting people to pass exams. And you got a really good score too. And another thing about the scoring that they do for the NABCEP exams is it's this weird thing called scaled scoring, where it's not based on the percentage, but it's a score. And so they take this person called a psychometrician. Psycho is mind, metrician is measurer. So they're mind measurers out there measuring your mind with their exams. And I've sat on some committees with them, like when I was on the PVIP installation exam committee. It's been over a decade now since I was on that committee, but we had this really cool psychometrician. Her name was Lynn. She had cool hair. And it was pretty fun to be on that exam committee with John Wiles and all these different people, Ward Bauer, Dave Click. I still see these guys, a couple of Dans. I see them around. It was just like a great experience being on that exam committee. But the psychometricians would have some special way of figuring out how to measure your mind. And they would come and they would figure out like which questions were more relevant, less relevant, and all that kind of stuff. Just really hard to explain. All I could say is it's sort of like a curve, but it's not a curve, but it's like a curve. And then the highest grade that you can get, even if you answered them all right, is a 99. And only once have I ever seen anybody get a 99, and I immediately hired her. So Brittany, she works for me, and she's great at doing stuff, helping me make these classes, and I'm pretty impressed. And it's almost like to get a 99, you have to get lucky too, to a certain degree, because there's some questions on exams that are just perhaps not perfectly written, or you have just different people with different opinions writing the questions. Nothing's perfect, especially the more difficult an exam gets. And plus you're interpreting something like the National Electrical Code, which has different interpretations depending on who you're talking to. So what might be right to the top expert in the world might be wrong to the next 2 and 3 top experts in the world, depending on who's the top expert. But yeah, it's great to prove yourself. And one of the things that I do with my classes too is I mess around a lot, try to make things fun. And I have these editors that spend more time editing than I spend even making the videos. And they are like guys and a woman that just had a baby. They're really good at making them fun and like making them a little bit more like YouTube shorts, TikToks, Instagram reels, all that kind of stuff. So they're just a little bit more fun than when I first started doing it. It was just a little bit more boring. And who likes boring? Boring stinks.
I agree. That was my other big thing. What I emailed you about was, like I said, it was the easiest online classes I've ever taken as far as staying engaged, strictly due to you making things fun. I've never had to have classes quite like that, and it just was little jokes you do and the little sayings you'll throw out there and just talking, joking about living out on this island and this and that, everything. It just, you always could expect something kind of funny for you to say or something. And so it kept me really engaged, which was great because some of the material can get pretty complex and maybe at times get a little dry and whatnot, but just the way that you taught it was pretty rudimentary to me staying engaged. And it helped so much. It was actually fun it never was a chore to really listen to the lectures, which was great.
Yeah, thanks so much. One of the things that I like to do too is to study memory techniques and figure out different cool ways of remembering things. And one of the things that people do is they make things sound crazy. And the crazier something sounds in your own head with just your little memory technique, the easier it is to remember. And like if it's a joke, I think jokes too, just jokes in themselves, things that reinforce things. If you could get somebody to laugh at themselves, you might be able to get them to change their opinion. Go like, oh, that is kind of ridiculous what I've been doing. And so making things fun, entertaining, interesting makes them more memorable. And the whole idea of taking a class is to remember something. And nobody has a photographic memory. I think that's a fallacy, except for Rain Man. And that was Dustin Hoffman, or the guy that Rain Man was about. You use your brain for certain things, and it's just like you got to go over things multiple times from different angles and make little jokes about things and make weird acronyms and all that kind of stuff. And then you start to remember it. And then you go from your short-term memory and you slip it onto your long-term memory. And I also look too, is that your head is like a computer, and you have RAM, and that's like your short-term memory. And then you have your long-term memory, which is your hard drive. And your hard drive can get full. And so then you might have to dump some stuff into the cloud. I don't know what that means. We don't really have the USB port yet where we can retrieve it from the cloud, but we're working on that. Another thing too that I think that's really important is sleep for learning stuff. And so I think you got to think like, well, why do we dream? Why do even animals dream? What's that about? Why do we sleep? And I think what it's doing is it's taking and moving stuff from the RAM to the hard drive. It's kind of the way that I look at it. So it's taking it from your short-term memory to your long-term memory. And then other things too, if you had like old memories a long time ago, sometimes you need to redo them. And I think that's another thing that dreams do. Plus, dreams are really good for relaxing. It's sort of like you're watching a movie, you just don't remember it.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
And one of these memory champions, these guys that can memorize 50 decks of cards and stuff like that, he actually will wake up and then memorize his dreams.
Wow.
And he does practice on like how to memorize his dreams, which is cool. For a while there, I was keeping a dream journal just to experiment with memory and stuff like that. But it's been a while since I wrote down a dream.
Yeah.
But it's a good thing to experiment with.
Yeah. Oh, that would be interesting, actually.
Yeah. And then another thing. So I read this book. I've read a couple of them, but this one book called Quantum Memory, which has nothing to do with quantum mechanics, but it's just a good, catchy title, Quantum. And this guy, Dominic O'Brien, who was the world memory champion a bunch of times, that could memorize all the decks of cards and all that kind of stuff. And I learned all these different ways of memorizing things. In fact, I should do it again, because if you don't do it over and over again, then you forget stuff. But I got to a point where I could memorize 100 digits of pi. So I was like 3.141592653. And that's about as far as I can go right now. But the way that I did it, it was called the journey method. And so I would take a trip, and sometimes the trip would be through your house, and you just look at this corner and look at that corner, and you look at a book and you think of what's the name of the book or something like that. And it sounds something like you're trying to remember and in a certain order and things like that. And that's how I did it with the numbers. And they would have like different tricks too, where you would remember two numbers in a row. And so like Dan Aykroyd would be D is the fourth letter, A is the first letter. So that's 41. So 3.141 for the 41. And so he would be on that path. And other things too. Some people might have seen the Book of Eli, which is a movie about this guy that memorized the Bible like word for word. So like people couldn't steal the Bible from him, right? It's in his head. But they say that's how that Homer, that like you've probably heard about the Iliad and the Odyssey, like the first books. And I think that they just did it by memory for hundreds of years before somebody wrote it down.
Wow.
And so you go back into those days before they had printing presses and things like that. And a lot of things were written down hundreds of years just from memory. You can even look we brought up the Bible. That was something too, that they didn't write it down like when Jesus was here.
Yeah.
Or you could look at Old Testaments and all that kind of stuff. I don't mean to just say one religion or anything like that.
Yeah, how it's involved is pretty impressive. It's pretty crazy. And I mean, really what it comes down to in taking a test, it's really just memorization, right? I mean, you're really just trying to memorize all that material and then pull it back out when you're taking a test.
Even though it's like a lot of memorization too, understanding also.
Well,
like
of course.
Yeah, like another thing that I see people have trouble with sometimes too is, let's say that they're doing string sizing. They're doing some long calculation that has a bunch of steps, and they just go, okay, I'm going to memorize the steps. And it's not bad to memorize the steps, but I think it helps a lot that each time, each way along for every step, you know where you are. And so you could go like, okay, this number looks right. I could go on, because everybody makes mistakes. I would make a mistake when I'm teaching a class. I do it all the time because everybody makes mistakes. And then I catch myself. I go, that number doesn't sound right. Let's figure out why. And so then I use that mistake that I made to help teach people about mistakes and how they're okay to make, as long as you catch yourself.
Yeah, so it's definitely very valuable to understand what you're doing, to, like you said, catch yourself, and for cross-referencing. If this doesn't seem right, well, why? And then you can check something other to see if it lines up or makes sense, and there you go.
Yeah, and then another good thing too that people should learn is study habits. And so there's something called state-dependent memory, which means that you want to study in the same state of memory as you take the test. And no, that doesn't mean drinking a beer before the test, people. Even though everybody in college is probably going, cool,
Yeah.
And so what that kind of means is, like, you figure out what time you're going to take the test, and you try to get in that state of memory and always study at that time of the day. For an example, is there was this hotel that I took a NABCEP exam at. It was in Walnut Creek. It was Marriott. And the day before the test, I went in there and I sat at the table that actually ended up being the table that I sat at. So I got in there early enough where I could go. So I sat at the exact same table, but I went to that table and I studied at the same table I took the test at the same time of the day. And I think that was helpful. It just got me in the zone for that too. So
yeah, I would imagine that'd be pretty helpful.
And another thing too that I sometimes think of, and I'm not 100% sure about this one, but if people are going to take the test and be like, man, after this test, I'm going to go party. and then they're sitting there taking a test, thinking about what beer they're going to order. So
yeah.
So I'm not saying that like to not go party, but don't make plans.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I didn't have much going on after I went and had a lunch and let it all sink in. But yeah, I agree. Yeah, maybe don't make huge plans, because then you're just going to get excited and worked up about huge plans afterwards and maybe be a little sidetracked.
Yeah, I almost think that too. It might even be a good idea to, like, after the exam, to study, just because you make plans to study, you do a little bit of studying, and it just makes it so you're just super in the study mode the whole time. Just a thought, just a theory.
Yeah, I studied a bunch throughout the whole course, but the day before, I took the day off and I just studied for about 10 or 12 hours, and I called it about 9 o'clock and said, all right, going to bed, getting good sleep. And I didn't look at anything in the morning because my test was at 8:30 in the morning, but it's 40 minutes away. So I felt pretty prepared though. So I cut it off at 9 o'clock the night before and said, all right, let's go do it.
Yeah, I remember when I was taking my SAT test in high school, and I took it a few times, and my dad gave me this truck that had a big drill press strapped to it. And I was living up in the mountains, so there's all these windy roads. And so I take off down the hill, hit the brakes, and this drill press smashes and crushes the cab of the pickup truck.
Oh boy.
And so then I went back. I was like, oh no. And they're like, here, take the Cadillac, or whatever it was. It was probably a Cadillac. And so then I took the other car. And the weird thing was, I think that was the middle time I took the SAT test. That was my best score. That was the one that got me into college. And so you would think I would have been all disturbed, or maybe it was just random luck or something like that. But who knows? Maybe it's a good idea to crash your car on the way to an exam. Just kidding, everybody. Don't do that. But who knows? Maybe it set off some chemical reaction in my brain or something. It was like the flight or fright and got those hormones cooking in there and
Yep. Got
got a
y'all
few A, B's,
amped
and
up.
C's already. Yeah, definitely woke me up, you know.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, and another thing too, that if people are not taking it at home, which most people take it at home, which is good for the state dependent memory, because if you're
Hmm.
studying at home, you take it at home, that's a cool thing. But for people that are going to take the test somewhere else, like you did, I do have some people that take my classes, especially for the associate exam, that don't even have computers. And so they go to the testing center and things like that, is to go there like ahead of time and figure out parking and all that kind of stuff and figure out how you're going to get to there and where the room is and all that kind of stuff. Because there's nothing worse too than you're on your way to your test and you're like, I'm late, they're going to cancel me. And that's probably not releasing the right brain chemicals when you're doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Give yourself ample time and be familiar with where you're taking it. I was fairly familiar because I've been in the area multiple times and it's a small little college, so I wasn't too worried about it. But yeah, give yourself time. Don't be rushed.
Yeah, so like some of these people are taking it in some testing center in some big city, or there might be some college where it's like a half an hour walk from the parking lot. And they go to the college and they're not a student there. And so they have to figure out where they could do some kind of guest parking and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's how it was like when I took it 9 years ago in Seattle. It was like that.
So maybe we'll talk a little bit too. So people are getting ready, they're taking the test, and they sign up for the test too. So you have an appointment for the test. And you've done that recently. How far ahead of time did you make the appointment?
I think I made it like 3 weeks ahead.
So
I
that's
think,
kind of a long time compared to most people.
yeah, I think it was about 3 weeks. But I mean, I knew it gave me options to take it much sooner. Like I basically put in my area, whatever, and it pops up. This place is doing it, this place is doing it, and you can choose what area, and then it shows the times. It's really easy. I was actually really impressed with the platform.
Yeah, and then there's ways to reschedule. There's also charges and things like that. If you just totally don't show up, that's definitely not recommended.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely show up. And I knew, I mean, I'm so fortunate I passed first time, but I knew if I did not pass, I had to go home and reschedule it and hope I can take it
Mhm.
exactly 2 weeks later because that was when my application expired. So,
What's really cool too is you got all those extra points, so you did way better than you needed to. So
uh-huh.
did you know that you could sell your extra points now to somebody that needs them, like somebody that failed?
Oh, well, hey,
Yeah.
well, send me the
Yeah.
info.
Yeah, they're on eBay.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah, it's like $100 a point. Yeah, the other cool thing too is the old way that they used to do it when we sat in the room, it was once every 6 months. And they would
Yep.
do it all across the country. So there'd be people in New York and Hawaii and all that kind of stuff. Now it could be anywhere in the world.
Hmm.
And I teach a lot of international classes too. And I was always going, come on, NABCEP, you got to make it so people in other countries can take the exam. So that's a really super cool thing that they can do too.
Yeah, they really expanded on making it people are able to take it in different areas and make just so much more. It's so much more convenient now for in everyone, really.
Yeah, and another thing that I see too, especially when I do these classes, they're like workforce development classes. And so they'll say, okay, we'll cover the associate exam. And a lot of the people haven't taken tests. They don't have a lot of test experience or haven't taken any tests. And they're nervous about it for good reason because they haven't done that before. And sometimes they'll sign up right away and they go, okay, I've got 6 months to take the exam. I'm going to do it. And then they wait. And then after 6 months ends, they have forfeited the exam fee. And so for the associate exam, it's $150. And I feel bad. And I've seen organizations forfeit $150 for many people and spend thousands of dollars on exam fees, which ends up being a donation to NABCEP when NABCEP's a good cause. So good
Hmm.
for them. Well, it also might be partially a donation to the people at the testing center too.
Hmm.
So we'd rather have it be for NABCEP because we love NABCEP. I also recommend that people that are doing the associate exam that they don't wait too long because people are like, well, I'm going to study more. I really want to ace that test. I just don't feel right. And then they wait so long that then they forgot more than they remembered. It's like two steps forward, one step back. And then if you don't go enough steps forward, you're just going backwards.
Yep.
So people just need to do it, take the test, pass the
Yeah.
exam. Even if they don't pass the exam, it's not the end of the world. They can just take it again, especially for the associate. It's not that expensive. It's $150.
Yeah, I watched that little prep talk video from, I don't know who it was, but it's on the 40-hour course. Must have been a previous student or something, but he does a little prep talk and talks about statistics about how many people take the HeatSpring course and actually don't end up taking the PVIP, but the percentage of people do, and the pass rate, which is really high. Now, yeah, I was shocked, because that's what he pointed out, is for how many people take the HeatSpring course, a lot of them don't even end up doing the PVIP, but you're so far along, you should.
Yeah.
And I 100% agree, because like I said, it prepped me so well for it. I highly encourage anyone who takes the course to follow through, just take the PVIP soon after.
Yeah, and I believe that video is from Brian Hayden, and he's the super cool founder of HeatSpring. I love working with him. It's just the coolest platform ever. It's just like what's good for one is good for all. I've never met somebody with such a positive attitude. Well, except for maybe my past Tai Chi teacher, Jarl. She had a positive attitude. But he's just like, yeah, whatever's, he sets it up. So we just share the profits and things like that when people sign up for the classes. We're always on the same side. So sometimes when you're working with somebody, it's like they're watching out and they're like, it's like competitive and who gets this money and who gets that money and all that kind of stuff. And working with Brian Hayden is just like the best thing ever. So I totally love working with that dude.
That's great.
And we also have somebody over there that's totally cool. Her name is Britt Heller, and she's also PVIP. She's also PV Technical Sales. That's PVTS. And she does other things for the industry too. So she's really awesome to work with. They're going to both be at the NABCEP conference again this year. And another thing is I have people working for me, so I'll just give them a shout out too. So we have South, who just had a baby. Woohoo! And then one of her relatives, James, through her husband, and then also her nephew, Nix, and they're all super awesome. And then I also mentioned there was Brittany, who got the highest ever score of anybody on any NABCEP exam. I'm sure NABCEP might prove me wrong. Like maybe she tied. There might be somebody else out there, but I've never heard of anybody getting a 99 besides her. So that was pretty super awesome. Woohoo!
Impressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been so good talking to you.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on. It was nice chatting. And again, thank you so much for you and HeatSpring for the course. Helped a lot. And it does feel really good to finally have gone through this and passed it and on to the next.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much. And then I hope I will get to meet you in person.
Yeah, I hope so, Sean. I hope I can see you at a conference or something soon.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So thank you so much, Garret Little. He's a project manager for Sunbridge Solar. He is PV installation professional certified. Yay! Woohoo! So thanks so much, Garret. It was great talking to you. I love talking to you. We'll hang out sometime. And thanks for listening to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. To get NABCEP certified and have an experience like Garret Little and get your PVIP or your PVTS or your PV Design and Specialist and your PV CMS, that's PV Commissioning and Maintenance Specialist certification, and your NABCEP PV Technical Sales, that's PVTS, or you have the PV Installer Specialist, that's PVIS, or you have the PV Design Specialist, PVDS, or you have the Energy Storage Installation Professional, and that is not a PV at all at the beginning. That's the ESIP, like the PVIP. And I also need to mention the PV System Inspector certification. And of course, last, because it's the easiest one, it is still probably the most popular thing going on at NABCEP. And we can't forget the PV Associate credential. So if you wanted to get any of those credentials, I have classes for all of those certifications, and we'll get you certified. You get them all. Get more letters after your name than the alphabet. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and I mean it. PVIP, PVDS, and so on and so forth. Keep on going. Woohoo! Enjoy yourselves. Have a great day, and go to Solar Sean, that is solarsean.com.